They told me she was gone. That was the official story, the one repeated at hushed family gatherings, the one offered to curious neighbors, the explanation given when her name accidentally surfaced in conversation. My sister Eliza had simply gone away. But the locked door at the end of the upstairs hallway told a different story. For 10 years, that Maplewood barrier stood as both a monument and a mystery, its brass knob collecting dust that no one dared disturb. I was 13 when they locked it. Now, at 23, I've spent nearly half my life walking past that door, feeling its presence like a physical weight. Sometimes, in the periphery of my vision, I could swear I saw the knob turning, but whenever I looked directly, it was perfectly still. Other times, I pressed my ear against the cool wood, holding my breath, straining to hear anything from the other side. There was never a sound. Until last night. I was passing by, as I had thousands of times before, when I heard it. A whisper. My name, Daniel, soft as tissue paper, slipping through the keyhole like thread through a needle's eye. I froze, convinced I had imagined it. But then it came again, slightly louder. Daniel, help me. The voice was unmistakably Eliza's. But that was impossible. Eliza was gone. Wasn't she? The Harrison family home had always been full of secrets, but none as tangible as the locked room at the end of the upstairs hallway. My parents, Margaret and Robert Harrison, were respected fixtures in our small Connecticut town. Dad a surgeon at the regional hospital, Mom a retired high school English teacher who now volunteered at the library. We lived in one of those grand Victorian houses that tourists sometimes photographed, with its sweeping front porch and ornate gables, a picture-perfect exterior that masked the fissures within. Eliza was 5 years older than me, brilliant and troubled in equal measure. I remember her as a kaleidoscope of contradictions, laughing wildly as she spun me around the backyard until we both collapsed, dizzy and breathless, then later that same evening, finding her staring vacantly at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, not recognizing me when I spoke to her. There were the medications, of course. Orange prescription bottles lined up on her nightstand like sentinels. The hushed conversations between my parents that would abruptly cease when I entered a room. The unexplained absences from school that stretched from days into weeks. Your sister isn't well, Mom would say, stroking my hair. But she's getting help. That's all you need to know. I was 8 years old when Eliza had what everyone called the incident. I wasn't supposed to see, but I did. She was in the kitchen, surrounded by broken glass, her bare feet bleeding as she stood amid the shards. She was cutting her hair with butcher scissors, irregular chunks falling to the floor, her eyes wide and unfocused. When Dad tried to approach her, she pressed the scissors against her own throat. They're inside me, she kept saying. They've been inside me all along. That night, Eliza left in an ambulance. She came back 3 months later, thinner and quieter, her once wild eyes now dulled by whatever they were giving her. She moved differently, too carefully, as if she was always conscious of taking up space. For almost 5 years, this new version of Eliza existed alongside us, but not truly with us. There were good days when glimpses of her old self shone through, but they became increasingly rare. Then came her 18th birthday. I remember waking to shouting, then an eerie silence that was somehow worse. I crept downstairs to find my parents in the living room, Mom sobbing into her hands, Dad on the phone speaking urgently about another episode and immediate intervention. I never saw Eliza being taken away that final time. When I woke the next morning, her door was locked, and my parents told me she had gone to a special school far away. No, I couldn't call her. No, we couldn't visit. Yes, it was for the best. For weeks afterward, I'd catch Mom standing outside Eliza's door, her hand resting on the wood as if she could feel my sister's presence through it. Sometimes I'd find Dad there too, late at night, his forehead pressed against the frame, whispering what sounded like apologies. As months turned into years, Eliza's room remained untouched, a preserved artifact of a person we no longer spoke of. Questions about her were deflected, then discouraged, then finally met with such pained expressions that I stopped asking altogether. The family photos featuring Eliza gradually disappeared from the walls, replaced by landscapes and abstracts. It was as if my parents were methodically erasing her, one memory at a time. But I couldn't forget. How could I, when her room remained a constant reminder of her absence? Sometimes I'd stand before that locked door, trying to imagine what lay beyond it. Was it frozen in time, exactly as she'd left it? Did Mom go in sometimes, when no one was home, to dust the surfaces and air out the memories? I moved through adolescence in a house haunted not by a ghost, but by an absence. I graduated high school, started at the state university, studying psychology, perhaps unconsciously seeking answers to the questions that had shaped my childhood. I moved into an apartment near campus, but came home frequently, partly out of dutiful son obligation and partly because I couldn't shake the feeling that I was somehow tethered to that house, to that locked door, to whatever truth lay behind it. Which brings me to last night. I had come home for the weekend, as I often did now that Dad's health was declining. The cancer diagnosis had come 6 months ago, and while he put on a brave face, the treatments were taking their toll. Mom seemed to have aged a decade in half a year, the worry etching permanent lines around her eyes and mouth. It was just past midnight. I couldn't sleep. Insomnia had been my constant companion since childhood, so I was wandering the darkened hallway, the house creaking and settling around me. As I passed Eliza's door, something made me stop. A feeling like static electricity raising the hair on the back of my neck. And then, her voice, my name, whispered through the wood. I stood frozen, convinced I was hallucinating from exhaustion. But when it came again, Daniel, help me. The sound was too distinct to dismiss. I pressed my ear to the door. Eliza, I whispered back, feeling foolish and frightened and hopeful all at once. Silence stretched for so long that I began to doubt myself again. Then, so faint I almost missed it. Find the key. Please. My heart hammered against my ribs. Where? Mom's jewelry box. The false bottom. I pulled back from the door, my mind racing. This was madness. Eliza couldn't be in that room. She hadn't been in that room for 10 years. And yet, the voice. Daniel. It came again, more urgent now. Hurry, before they come back. Who? Who's coming back? But there was no answer, only a soft sound that might have been retreating footsteps. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had I finally cracked under the weight of all the unspoken things in this house? Or was something impossibly, terrifyingly real happening behind that locked door? Eventually, I forced myself back to my room, but sleep was out of the question. I lay awake until dawn, replaying those whispered words, trying to convince myself they had been a dream, knowing they weren't. When morning came, I watched my parents closely over breakfast. Dad was frilier than ever, picking at his toast without interest. Mom was in perpetual motion, refilling coffee cups, adjusting the blinds, straightening items that didn't need straightening. Neither showed any sign that anything unusual had occurred overnight. I might go through some old photos today, I said casually as Mom cleared the plates. For that memory book project I mentioned. She paused, a dish towel clutched in her hand. What a lovely idea. There are albums in the attic, I think. I nodded, not pushing further. The attic would indeed be my first stop, but not for photo albums. As soon as my parents left, Dad for his chemotherapy appointment, Mom driving him as always, I climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. The space was stifling, dust motes dancing in the shafts of light from the small windows. Cardboard boxes and old furniture created a maze of forgotten possessions. I had a vague memory of seeing Mom's old jewelry box up here years ago, relegated to storage when she received a newer, fancier one from Dad on their anniversary. It took nearly an hour of searching, but I finally found it tucked inside a larger carton labeled Margaret, College. The box was ornate, cherry wood with mother-of-pearl inlay. I carried it downstairs to examine in better light. The red velvet interior held a few forgotten trinkets, a single pearl earring, a broken gold chain, a class ring. Nothing of value, which was probably why it had been abandoned to the attic. I ran my fingers along the interior, feeling for any irregularity that might indicate a hidden compartment. In the bottom corner, the velvet gave slightly under pressure. I pressed harder and felt a distinct click. The false bottom popped up just enough for me to slide my fingernail under the edge and lift it. There, nestled in a small cavity, was a single brass key. My hands trembled as I lifted it out. It was small and old-fashioned, the kind used for interior doors in old houses like ours. The kind that might open a bedroom door that had been locked for 10 years. I held the key so tightly that its teeth bit into my palm as I made my way back to the upstairs hallway, to Eliza's door. Standing before it, I suddenly hesitated. If Eliza was somehow, impossibly, on the other side, what condition would she be in? And if she wasn't, if I was losing my grip on reality, what would opening this door do to me? But I had come too far to turn back. I slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. With a deep breath, I turned it, hearing the mechanism release with a soft click that echoed in the silent house. I pushed the door open. The room beyond was dark, heavy curtains blocking most of the daylight. As my eyes adjusted, I saw that it was both familiar and strange, Eliza's room as I remembered it, yet transformed by a decade of stillness. The purple bedspread she'd loved, the bookshelf packed with volumes, the desk where she'd once written in journals that I wasn't allowed to read. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, undisturbed for years. There was no sign that anyone had been in this room recently, let alone last night. And most certainly, there was no sign of Eliza. I stepped fully into the room, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The air was stale, the unmistakable atmosphere of a space long sealed. I moved to the windows and pulled back the curtains, coughing as dust billowed around me. Sunlight flooded in, illuminating dancing particles in the preserved tableau of my sister's abandoned life. Had I imagined her voice? Was I so desperate for answers, for connection, that my mind had conjured her whispers from the void? I was about to leave when I noticed something on the desk that didn't fit with the undisturbed nature of everything else. A journal, one I recognized as Eliza's favorite, bound in dark blue leather, lay open, a pin beside it. The dust around it was disturbed, as if someone had recently handled it. My heart racing, I approached the desk. The open page contained handwriting I recognized instantly as my sister's, the looping cursive she'd practiced endlessly, proud of its elegance. The entry was dated yesterday. They told you I was gone, Daniel, but I never left. Not really. I've been here all along, trapped between worlds. If you're reading this, you heard me last night. I'm getting stronger, able to reach through for brief moments. But I don't have much time. They'll realize what I'm doing soon. Look behind the mirror. Find my other journals. Read them all, in order. You'll understand then. About the experiments. About what Mom and Dad did. About what they're still doing. I'm not crazy, Daniel. I never was. The voices I heard were real. The things I saw were real. They just didn't want me telling anyone. Be careful. Don't let them see you in here. Don't let them know you know. I'll try to reach you again tonight. Same time. Wait for me. I stared at the words, my entire understanding of the past decade crumbling around me. This couldn't be real. And yet, here was Eliza's handwriting, fresh on the page, contradicting everything I had been told. With shaking hands, I moved to the full-length mirror that hung on the closet door. It was heavy, ornately framed, a family heirloom that Eliza had claimed as a teenager. I ran my fingers around the edges, feeling for any irregularity. Near the bottom, the wooden frame felt slightly different, a seam barely perceptible. I pressed, and a small panel popped open, revealing a narrow space behind the mirror. Inside were 5 identical journals, each numbered on the spine. I took them out and quickly returned the mirror to its position. Then, gathering the journals and the one from the desk, I left the room, locking the door behind me. The key went into my pocket, a small weight that felt impossibly heavy with implication. Back in my own room, I spread the journals on my bed. 6 volumes of my sister's thoughts, experiences, fears, perhaps the truth about what had happened to her. I opened the first one, dated 11 years ago, a year before the incident. September 3rd. Dad came to my room again last night. Another session, he called it. The questions are getting stranger. He keeps asking if I hear things, see things. The truth is, I've started to. Whispers when no one's around. Shadows that move at the corner of my vision. But I didn't tell him that. Something warned me not to. Instead, I lied. Said everything was normal. He looked disappointed. Why would a father want his daughter to hear voices? Mom watches me constantly now. I caught her writing in a notebook after dinner, recording my reactions to some story on the news. Like I'm a subject, not her child. Something's wrong in this house. Something's wrong with me, but not in the way they think. I felt sick as I turned page after page. The journals documented a methodical campaign that could only be described as psychological experimentation. My parents, my respected, ordinary parents, apparently administering unlabeled medications to Eliza, subjecting her to strange tests, isolating her from friends who complicated the results. And throughout, Eliza's growing certainty that she was experiencing something genuine and terrifying. Not psychosis, but some kind of ability or awareness that my parents were deliberately cultivating, then suppressing when it grew too powerful. The final journal, the one from the desk, contained entries from the past week. May 12th. I've finally figured out how to project, just for moments, but it's getting stronger. The space between where they've trapped me and the physical world is thinning. Last night, I managed to actually touch one of my journals. Soon, I might be able to fully manifest, at least briefly. Daniel comes home often now. I can sense him on the other side, feel his presence when he passes my door. He's my only hope. They would never suspect him, sweet, obedient Daniel who never questioned the story. If I can just reach him, make him hear me. I closed the journal, my mind reeling. This was too fantastical, too horrifying to believe. And yet, it explained so much. The secrecy, the medications, the strange conversations I'd overheard throughout my childhood. What had my parents done? What were they still doing? And where, exactly, was Eliza now? I had just hidden the journals under my mattress when I heard the front door open downstairs. My parents were home. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. I needed to act normal while I processed what I'd discovered, while I waited for night to come again. For Eliza to whisper through the door once more. Dinner that evening was an exercise in restraint. Every time I looked at my parents, at Mom carefully cutting Dad's meat for him, at Dad's trembling hands, I wondered how these ordinary people could have done the things Eliza described in her journals. Had I misunderstood? Was Eliza truly mentally ill? Her journals the elaborate delusions of a troubled mind? But then I would remember the fresh writing, the disturbed dust, the key hidden exactly where she said it would be. Something impossible was happening, and my parents were at the center of it. "You're quiet tonight," Mom observed, her eyes sharp despite her placid smile. "Just thinking about finals," I lied, pushing food around my plate. "Got a big paper due next week." Dad nodded approvingly. "On what subject?" "Abnormal psychology, actually." I watched them carefully as I said it. "We're studying unusual manifestations of schizophrenia." Mom's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Dad's gaze dropped to his plate. "Fascinating field," Dad finally said, his voice carefully neutral. "Though labels can be so limiting, don't you think? The mind is capable of extraordinary things that science is only beginning to understand." "What kind of extraordinary things?" I pressed, heart racing. A look passed between my parents, so quick I almost missed it. "Well," Dad said slowly, "consciousness itself is still largely a mystery. How thoughts form, how perception works. Some conditions we call disorders might simply be different modes of perception, like hearing voices that aren't there," I suggested, "or seeing things others can't see." Mom set down her fork with a sharp clink. "Daniel, perhaps this isn't appropriate dinner conversation. Your father is tired from his treatment today." The subject was closed, but the tension lingered throughout the meal. As I helped Mom clear the dishes afterward, I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "Are you okay?" I asked. She smiled too brightly. "Just tired, sweetheart. It's been a long day." "It must be hard, with Dad sick," I ventured. "Brings back a lot of memories, I imagine." Her movement stilled. "What do you mean?" "Just family stuff." "Eliza." The plate she was rinsing slipped from her grasp, clattering into the sink. "We don't discuss that, Daniel. You know that. It's been 10 years, Mom. Don't you think it's time we talked about what really happened?" She turned to me, her face suddenly hard in a way I'd never seen before. "Nothing happened. Your sister was ill. She went away for treatment. End of story." "Then why is her room still locked? Why can't I know where she is now?" "Because some doors are better left closed," she said, her voice low and tense. "For everyone's safety, including yours." A chill ran through me at her words, at the implicit threat within them. Before I could respond, Dad called from the living room, asking for his medication. Mom's face instantly rearranged itself into its usual pleasant mask. "We'll talk another time, dear," she said, in a tone that suggested we absolutely would not. I retreated to my room after that, lying on my bed and staring at the ceiling, waiting for the house to grow quiet. Around 11, I heard Mom helping Dad up the stairs, murmuring reassurances as he struggled with each step. Their bedroom door closed. Water ran in their bathroom, then silence. I waited another hour, until I was certain they were asleep. Then I crept back to Eliza's door, key in hand. I unlocked it as quietly as possible and slipped inside. The room was dark again, the curtains having been drawn, though I distinctly remembered leaving them open. I switched on the small desk lamp, casting a pool of warm light around me. "Eliza," I whispered into the stillness. "Are you here?" Nothing. The room remained exactly as I'd left it earlier, save for the closed curtains. I moved to the desk, checking the journal I'd replaced. No new entries. Was I too early? Had I misunderstood when she would try to contact me again? I sat in her desk chair, waiting, watching the minutes tick by on her long-stopped alarm clock, which I'd reset during my earlier visit. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m. The house settled around me, occasional creaks and groans breaking the silence. At 1:23 a.m., the temperature in the room plummeted. My breath clouded in front of me. The desk lamp flickered, then stabilized. And in the mirror, movement. I turned sharply, but there was no one behind me. When I looked back at the mirror, I saw her, Eliza, as she would be now, 28 years old. Her face was thinner than I remembered, her eyes deeper, darker. She wore the same clothes she'd had on the day of the incident. Eliza, I gasped, reaching toward the mirror. Her image rippled, like a reflection in disturbed water. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear her. I moved closer to the mirror, straining to understand. Running out of energy, I finally made out. Can't maintain the connection long. Where are you? I asked. What happened to you? Not where. When? Her voice was clearer now, though still distant, as if calling from the bottom of a well. I'm caught, between moments. They tethered me to this room, this house. Who did? Mom and Dad? Why? The mirror image flickered violently, Eliza's form distorting before stabilizing again. The project. Dad's real work. Not medicine, parapsychology. Government funded. Mom too. They needed subjects. Family was convenient. My mind reeled. My father was a surgeon. My mother, a teacher. They were normal, boring even. How could they be involved in something so sinister? The medications, Eliza continued, her voice growing fainter, designed to enhance natural psychic abilities. I was their star subject. Too successful. Started seeing things they didn't want me to see. What things? I pressed, desperate for answers before she faded away again. The others. The failed experiments. And the portal they were building. The lamp flickered more insistently now, the room growing colder still. Dad's not sick, Eliza whispered, her image beginning to fade. Cancer is a cover. They're activating the final stage. Using the energy from this house, from me, from all of us trapped here, to punch through to somewhere else. Somewhere they should never reach. How do I help you? How do I stop them? The basement. There's a door behind the old shelving unit. The real lab is there. You need to destroy the tether points. 5 of them. Small black boxes with red lights. Her form was barely visible now, a ghost of a ghost. Hurry, Daniel. They know I've reached you. They're coming. The lamp went out. In the sudden darkness, I heard the bedroom door creak open behind me. Oh, Daniel, came my mother's voice, soft with disappointment. We really hoped it wouldn't come to this. I spun around. Mom stood in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the dim hall light behind her. She wasn't in her nightgown as I expected, but fully dressed in what looked like lab attire, a white coat over dark clothes. What have you done with Eliza? I demanded, backing away until I hit the desk. She stepped into the room, and I saw she was holding something in her hand, a small device that looked like a medical injector. Your sister made her choice a long time ago, she said, her voice clinically detached. She could have been part of something revolutionary. Instead, she fought us at every turn. So you locked her in her room for 10 years? I was almost shouting now, fear and anger overwhelming caution. Mom's laugh was chilling in its gentleness. Oh, sweetheart. Eliza hasn't been in this room for a decade. At least, not physically. What she became exists somewhere between dimensions now. A consequence of her own resistance. I heard heavy footsteps on the stairs, Dad, coming to join this nightmare. You've been experimenting on your own children, I said, disgust rising in my throat. Your own daughter. For a greater purpose, Mom replied, taking another step toward me. Humanity is ready to evolve, Daniel. To transcend physical limitations. Your father's work is changing the very nature of reality. And what? I scoffed, trying to mask my terror with bravado. I'm next on the experiment list? The sorrow in her eyes was genuine, which somehow made it worse. You always were. We just hoped to bring you in willingly, when you were ready to understand. Eliza has clearly poisoned your mind against us. Dad appeared in the doorway then, and the shock of seeing him nearly stopped my heart. The frail, cancer-ridden man I'd eaten dinner with was gone. In his place stood my father as I remembered him from years ago, straight-backed, strong, his eyes clear and focused. The performance was convincing, wasn't it? He said, noting my expression. Necessary, I'm afraid. We needed you home regularly, susceptible, emotionally vulnerable. Cancer provides such a convenient cover for so many things. The casual cruelty of it, the manipulation spanning months, struck me like a physical blow. I lunged toward the door, desperate to escape, but Dad moved with surprising speed, blocking my path. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, son," he said, reaching for me. "We can help you understand. You'll thank us, eventually." Eliza would have too, if she hadn't been so stubborn. I dodged his grasp, frantically searching for another escape route. The window was too small, the drop too far. I was trapped, just as Eliza had been. "What are you going to do?" I asked, playing for time, my eyes darting around for anything I could use as a weapon. "Drug me like you did her? Turn me into some kind of psychic lab rat?" "We prefer the term conscious vessel," Dad said with clinical detachment. "Your sister's abilities were remarkable, but undisciplined. You've always been more malleable." Mom approached from the other side, the injector raised. "This won't hurt, Daniel. Just a mild sedative to help you calm down. Then we can talk properly." I backed away until I hit the mirror. Behind me, I felt it vibrate slightly, as if someone was pushing from the other side. The mirror. Eliza's words echoed in my mind. The space between where they've trapped me and the physical world is thinning. If she was trapped between dimensions, perhaps the mirror was more than just a hiding place for journals. Perhaps it was a literal portal to wherever she was. In a desperate gamble, I reached behind me and pounded on the mirror's surface. "Eliza," I shouted. "Help me." The glass shattered. Not outward, as physics would demand, but inward, collapsing away from me as if sucked into a vacuum. In its place was not the expected closet door, but a swirling darkness that seemed to bend the light around it. My parents froze, momentarily shocked. Dad recovered first, lunging toward me with a cry of alarm. But before he could reach me, a hand emerged from the darkness, pale, slender, familiar. Eliza's hand. Without hesitation, I grabbed it. Her grip was surprisingly solid, surprisingly strong. She pulled, and I let myself fall backward into the void. The last thing I saw was my parents' faces, transformed by something beyond anger or fear, a terrible, hungry anticipation. Then darkness engulfed me, and I was falling through infinite nothing. Falling. Endless falling through velvet darkness. No sensation but the continued pressure of Eliza's hand gripping mine. No sound but the rush of what might have been wind, might have been time itself flowing past me. Then impact, not painful, but disorienting. I found myself lying on what felt like solid ground, though I couldn't see it. Above, below, around me, everywhere was the same twilight gray, like the moment just before sunrise when the world is rendered in monochrome. "Eliza," I called out, my voice strangely flat, lacking echo. "I'm here." Her voice came from behind me. I turned, and there she was, my sister, looking both familiar and utterly changed. She appeared exactly as she had in the mirror, yet somehow more substantial here. Her edges were sharper, her presence more defined than in the physical world. "Where are we?" I asked, struggling to my feet in the formless gray. "The in-between," she said. "That's what I call it. Anyway. Not quite one dimension, not quite another. A pocket reality created by Dad's experiments." I stared around us. Gradually, as my eyes adjusted, I could make out structures in the distance, twisted approximations of buildings, trees, streets. Everything wavered slightly, as if underwater. "Is this our town?" "A shadow of it," Eliza confirmed. We were in a distorted version of our town's main street, the familiar storefronts twisted and elongated, their signs written in backward script. They claimed they were studying consciousness, Eliza explained as we walked. How the mind might exist independently of the body. But that was just the beginning. What they really wanted was to access other dimensions, parallel realities, potential futures, paths not taken. Why? Power, initially. Imagine seeing stock market trends before they happen, or enemy military movements, or election outcomes. The government funding was nearly unlimited. But something went wrong, I guessed. Her laugh was hollow. You could say that. They succeeded too well. The portals they opened, some things came through that weren't human. Never had been human. A chill ran through me. What kinds of things? Before she could answer, we rounded a corner and came upon a small park, or rather, the in-between's twisted version of it. Gathered there were perhaps a dozen figures, some standing still, others moving in strange, repetitive patterns. As we approached, I realized with horror that these were people or had been, once. Each was distorted in some unique, terrible way. A woman whose face was blank except for a too-wide mouth. A child whose limbs bent at impossible angles. An elderly man who flickered in and out of visibility like a faulty light bulb. The failures, Eliza said quietly. Early subjects whose transitions went wrong. Some are former colleagues of Mom and Dad. Some are other residents of our town who served as unwitting test subjects. They're trapped here, like me. Can they speak? Understand us? Some can. Others have lost too much of themselves. A figure detached from the group and approached us. It had been a man once, tall, broad-shouldered, but now its features were blurred, as if someone had taken an eraser to them. New arrival? It asked, its voice bubbling as if through liquid. My brother, Eliza explained. Daniel, this is Dr. Hayes. He worked with Dad at the beginning. The blurred head nodded. Harrison's boy. You have his eyes. I swallowed hard. What happened to all of you? Miscalculations, the thing that had been Dr. Hayes replied. Your father's brilliant, but reckless. Didn't fully understand the mechanics of dimensional transfer. Used us as prototypes. He gestured to his distorted form. This is the result. Neither fully here nor there. Existing in the fold between realities. But why take us? I asked. His own children? Eliza answered. Genetic compatibility. The transition is easier between blood relatives. Dad discovered he could use family members as anchors for the dimensional rifts. And we were conveniently at hand. The horror of it, the calculated cruelty, left me speechless. My entire childhood had been a carefully constructed laboratory. My sister and I nothing but specimens to be studied and utilized. What are they planning? I finally managed to ask. What's the final stage you mentioned? Eliza exchanged a glance with Dr. Hayes, who nodded grimly. Show him, he said. She led me away from the park, toward what in our world would have been the edge of town. As we walked, the environment grew increasingly unstable, buildings melting into one another, the ground beneath us occasionally becoming transparent, revealing swirling depths below. The in-between isn't just a side effect of their experiments, Eliza explained as we walked. It's a transitional space. A waiting room between dimensions. Waiting for what? Not what. Who? We crested a hill, and I stopped in my tracks. Before us stretched a vast plain that couldn't, exist in the limited geography of our small town. And in the center of this plain rose a structure that defied comprehension, a massive black obelisk that seemed to absorb the gray light around it, reaching up into infinity. What is that? I whispered, though I already knew on some instinctive level that I didn't want the answer. They call it the gateway, Eliza said. The culmination of their research. A permanent doorway between dimensions. As we watched, the air around the obelisk rippled, like heat waves off summer asphalt. A sound reached us, low, rhythmic, more felt than heard, a pulsation that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. It's getting stronger, Dr. Hayes said from behind us. I hadn't realized he'd followed. The barrier is thinning. What's on the other side? I asked. They don't know, Eliza said. That's the terrifying part. Dad and his team detected signals, patterns they interpreted as communication. They convinced themselves they were in contact with a more advanced intelligence, beings that could give humanity the ultimate knowledge. But you don't believe that. She shook her head. I felt what waits on the other side, Daniel. When my abilities were at their peak, before they realized I was fighting the conditioning, I sensed them. They're ancient, patient, hungry. Dr. Hayes made a sound that might have been a laugh. Your sister tried to warn them, called them the Devourers, said they feed on consciousness itself. Harrison dismissed it as a psychotic episode. So they locked me away, Eliza continued. Kept experimenting with other subjects, refining their techniques. But they couldn't achieve the same level of psychic ability they'd activated in me. That's why they've kept me alive all these years, trapped in this half-state. I'm still their anchor, their conduit. And me? I asked, dreading the answer. Insurance, she said simply. In case something happened to me. The genetic connection makes you compatible. With both of us, they can stabilize the gateway permanently. The pulsation from the obelisk intensified, making the ground beneath us tremble. In the distance, the twisted structures of the in-between town began to warp further, buildings stretching and contorting like taffy. It's starting, Dr. Hayes said, his blurred features somehow conveying alarm despite their indistinctness. They must have activated the lab protocols when you escaped. How long do we have? I asked. Minutes, maybe, Eliza said. Once the gateway fully opens, the Devourers will come through. First here, to the in-between, then to our world. How do we stop it? The tether points I told you about, the boxes in the basement lab. They maintain my connection to the physical world. If they're destroyed, the gateway will collapse. But I'm here now. How can I possibly reach them? Dr. Hayes placed a distorted hand on my shoulder. There's another way out. A weakness in the fabric between worlds. Your sister found it years ago. Used it to project herself back into your reality, at least partially. The mirror, I realized. Eliza nodded. It's a natural thin spot. Most reflective surfaces are, that's why folklore is full of mirrors as magical portals. The one in my room is particularly vulnerable because of how long I've been working on it from this side. Can you send me back through it? Not directly into my room. They'll be waiting there. But nearby. The bathroom mirror, perhaps. From there, you can reach the basement. The trembling beneath our feet intensified. In the distance, the obelisk surface had begun to crack, thin lines of brilliant white light spilling through the fissures. We need to hurry, Dr. Hayes urged. This place is becoming unstable. We turned and ran back toward town, toward Eliza's exit point. The landscape around us was deteriorating rapidly, trees melting into the ground, buildings collapsing in on themselves. The other trapped souls we'd seen earlier were nowhere in sight, having presumably fled or been absorbed into the chaos. As we ran, a terrible sound rolled across the plain behind us, a vast, groaning creak, as if an enormous door were slowly swinging open. I didn't look back. Almost there, Eliza panted as we reached a distorted version of our house. Inside was a warped mirror of our family home. The familiar layout stretched and compressed in unsettling ways. We rushed to the upstairs bathroom, where the mirror above the sink rippled and swirled like quicksilver. Once you're through, find the basement lab, Eliza instructed breathlessly. The tether points are black boxes about the size of paperbacks, arranged in a pentagonal pattern. Each has a red status light. Destroy them all, the connection will break, and the gateway will collapse. What about you? I asked. What happens to you if I break the tethers? Her smile was gentle, resigned. I've been half dead for 10 years, Daniel. It's time to finish the process, one way or another. No, I protested. There has to be a way to save you, to bring you back completely. There isn't. The person I was is gone. What's left is just echoes. Fragments. She touched my face, her hand cool and substantial against my cheek. It's okay. This is what I want. Dr. Hayes, who had been watching the window, suddenly stiffened. They're coming. Through the distorted glass, I could see shapes approaching, not human, not anything that had ever been human. Dark, fluid forms that seemed to absorb the gray light rather than reflect it. You have to go. Now, Eliza urged, pushing me toward the mirror. How do I? Just push through. Want it badly enough, and the membrane will yield. I placed my hands against the quicksilver surface, feeling it resist, then gradually give way. Before I plunged through, I turned back to my sister one last time. I love you, I said. I'm sorry I didn't help you sooner. You're helping me now, she replied. Go. Stop them. I pushed forward, the mirror's surface enveloping me like cold, thick liquid. For a moment, I was surrounded by silver nothingness, unable to breathe, to think, to be. Then I was falling forward, tumbling out of our upstairs bathroom mirror into the tiled floor of the real world. I lay there for a moment, gasping, my body readjusting to physical reality. Everything felt heavier here, more solid. Colors were brighter, sounds sharper. I struggled to my feet, fighting a wave of vertigo. The house was ominously quiet. My parents would be in Eliza's room, perhaps, or already in the basement, completing their insane project. I had to reach the lab before they realized I had returned. I crept out of the bathroom and down the stairs, careful to avoid the steps that creaked. The basement door was ajar, a faint blue light spilling out from below. As I approached, I could hear voices, my parents', raised in what sounded like an argument. Can't control it now, Mom was saying. The readings are off the charts. We need to abort. It's too late for that, Dad's voice replied. The harmonic resonance is already established. If we try to shut down now, the backlash could level the entire town. Then stabilize it. Use the backup protocols. We need Daniel for that. Without both siblings, the genetic anchor is incomplete. I had reached the basement steps now and could see down into what should have been our ordinary, cluttered basement. Instead, the space had been transformed into something from a science fiction nightmare. The concrete walls were lined with banks of humming equipment. Monitors displayed scrolling data in complex waveforms. And in the center of the room, I stifled a gasp. A circular platform about 10 feet in diameter dominated the space. Arranged in a perfect pentagon around it were 5 black boxes, each with a glowing red light, just as Eliza had described. But what they surrounded made my blood freeze. On the platform lay a body, Eliza's body. Thin, pale, clearly unconscious or comatose, she was connected to the machines by a web of wires and tubes. She looked exactly as I remembered her from 10 years ago, not a day older, preserved in some unnatural stasis. My parents stood at a control console near the platform, their backs to the stairs. They were both dressed in what looked like radiation suits with the hoods pulled back, and they were frantically adjusting controls as alarms began to sound from several monitors. "The dimensional breach is widening too rapidly," Dad said, his voice tense. "We're losing the exclusion buffer. Can we pull her consciousness back? Use it to stabilize the field? Not without risking total personality dissolution. We're past the point of finesse now. We need raw power, Daniel's compatible brainwave patterns." I had heard enough. Looking around desperately for a weapon, I spotted a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall near the bottom of the stairs. I grabbed it and charged into the lab. "Get away from her," I shouted. My parents spun around, shock registering on their faces before quickly transforming into calculated calm. "Daniel," Dad said, his voice steady, reasonable. "You're just in time. We need your help." "I know what you've been doing," I said, advancing slowly, the fire extinguisher raised. "I know about the gateway, about the devourers. I'm not helping you bring those things into our world." Mom took a step toward me, hands raised placatingly. "Sweetheart, you don't understand. We're on the verge of the greatest breakthrough in human history. Yes, there are risks, but the potential benefits." "Save it," I snapped. "I've seen what's on the other side. I've seen what you did to those people, to Eliza." Dad's expression hardened. "You've been in the transition space. Impossible. Unless..." His eyes widened. "She's grown stronger than we anticipated. Pulled you through herself." "Your calculations were wrong," I said, moving closer to the platform, to the tether points. "Whatever's coming through that gateway isn't going to share advanced knowledge. It's going to consume everything." "That's just Eliza's paranoia talking," Dad dismissed. "Her mind always was prone to fantasy. We've been in communication with the entities for years. They've already shared technological insights beyond our wildest." He was interrupted by a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a deep, resonant thrumming that made the concrete floor vibrate beneath our feet. The lights flickered, and several monitors went dark. "It's destabilizing," Mom said, turning back to the console. "Martin, we're losing containment." Dad's face went pale. "Impossible. The safeguards are failing," she cut him off. "All of them." I took advantage of their distraction to rush toward the nearest tether point. Before either of them could stop me, I swung the fire extinguisher with all my strength. The black box shattered, its red light blinking out. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The thrumming sound rose to a painful shriek. The remaining tether points began to pulse erratically. On the platform, Eliza's body convulsed, her back arching off the surface. "No," Dad shouted, lunging toward me. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I dodged his grasp and ran to the next tether point, smashing it before he could reach me. Another gone. The room began to warp around us, reality itself seeming to buckle. Through the distortion, I saw Mom frantically working at the console, trying to compensate for the failing system. "Martin, help me," she cried. "I can't contain the breach alone." Dad hesitated, torn between stopping me and saving his project. Science won out. He rushed to join Mom at the controls. I took out the third tether point, then the fourth. With each destruction, the distortion in the room intensified. Furniture elongated, colors shifted into impossible spectrums, gravity seemed to fluctuate. I struggled to stay on my feet as I approached the final box. "Daniel, stop." Dad was shouting now, genuine fear in his voice. "If you break the final tether without a controlled shutdown, the dimensional rebound could kill us all." I paused, the fire extinguisher raised above the last black box. "How do I save Eliza?" "You can't," Mom said, her voice breaking. "She's gone, Daniel. What's left is just a shell, a biological anchor." "You're lying." I spoke to her. "She's trapped between worlds because of what you did." Dad shook his head. "What you spoke to isn't Eliza anymore. It's something else using her consciousness as a host, a vehicle. We've suspected for years, but couldn't confirm without risking the project." Doubt crept in, cold and insidious. What if they were right? What if the Eliza I'd spoken to was just another deception? As if in response to my thoughts, Eliza's body on the platform suddenly went rigid. Her eyes snapped open, but they weren't her eyes. Where warm brown irises should have been, there was only blackness, depthless and ancient. When she spoke, the voice wasn't hers. It wasn't anyone's. It was a chorus of whispers and screams, layered atop one another. "Free US," it said. "Break the last seal." Mom let out a sob. "You see? That's not your sister, Daniel. It never was." The entity contacted us years ago, presenting itself as a benevolent intelligence. We realized too late that it was using us, using Eliza, to create a doorway. The thing wearing Eliza's body turned its head toward me, movements jerky and unnatural. Lies, it hissed. They sought power. Offered you. Offered her. Vessels for US. My head spun. Who was telling the truth? The parents who had experimented on their children, or the inhuman entity speaking through my sister's body? The room warped further, walls bulging inward, then stretching away. Through a rippling distortion in the air above the platform, I caught glimpses of something moving vast, dark shapes pressing against the thinning membrane of reality. I looked down at the final tether point, then at the thing that was both Eliza and not Eliza. In its black eyes, I saw recognition flicker, a momentary glimpse of my sister, trapped beneath layers of alien consciousness. Daniel, it whispered, and this voice was hers, struggling through. Finish it. Please. They're using all of us. They always were. Decision made, I brought the fire extinguisher down on the final black box. The world exploded into chaos. Light and sound ceased to have meaning. I was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, stretched across infinite possibilities and compressed into a single point of consciousness. Through the maelstrom, I caught fragmented impressions, my parents screaming, equipment imploding, Eliza's body hovering above the platform, surrounded by coalescing darkness, the basement walls dissolving into planes of pure energy. And beyond it all, between the fracturing layers of reality, I glimpsed them, the devourers. Not creatures in any sense I could comprehend, but voids, absences, anti-existence that somehow thought and hungered. They pushed against the weakened barriers, ancient beyond reckoning, patient beyond imagining. Then, a hand grasping mine. Familiar, substantial. This way, Eliza's voice, urgent in my ear. Quickly. I couldn't see her, couldn't see anything, but I held on as she pulled me through the chaos. We were running, though I had no body to run with, no legs to carry me. Fleeing through the collapsing spaces between worlds. What's happening? I tried to ask, though I had no mouth to speak with. Reality rebound, her voice replied. When the tethers broke, the gateway collapsed. Everything snapping back into place, or trying to. Mom and Dad. A pause. They won't make it. They were too close to the event horizon. I should have felt something at this, grief, perhaps, or vindication. Instead, there was only a hollow numbness, as if my emotions, like my body, had been left behind in the dissolution. And you? I asked. Are you? Real? Are you really Eliza? The hand holding mine tightened. Parts of me. The important parts. The rest was taken a long time ago. We were moving through what felt like thick liquid now, every forward motion requiring immense effort. Around us, reality was reconstituting itself, shadows becoming solid, sounds regaining coherence, gravity reasserting its pull. It's fighting us, Eliza said, strain evident in her voice. The entity. It's trying to keep the door open. How do we stop it? We can't stop it. But we can close the door behind us. Before I could ask what she meant, we burst through some invisible barrier and crashed into solidity. Pain returned in a wave as I found myself sprawled on a familiar surface, the hallway floor outside Eliza's bedroom. I had a body again, aching and bruised, but wonderfully real. Beside me lay Eliza, not the preserved, unchanging form I'd seen in the basement, but my sister as she should be now, a woman of 28. She was breathing heavily, her face pale and drawn with exhaustion. We made it, she gasped. Around us, the house groaned and shifted, floors undulating, walls breathing in and out like lungs. The air was thick with static electricity, raising the hair on my arms. Not quite, I said, struggling to my feet and pulling her up with me. The house is still connected to the in-between, she finished, leaning heavily against me. The gateway may be destabilized, but it's not fully closed. This place has been a bridge for too long. It's saturated with dimensional energy. As if to punctuate her words, a great crack appeared in the ceiling above us, revealing not attic joists and insulation, but a swirling void streaked with impossible colors. We need to get out, I said, half carrying her toward the stairs. It won't matter, she replied grimly. The breach will follow us. Expand. Eventually swallow everything. There has to be a way to stop it. She was silent for a moment as we made our painful way down the stairs, the house continuing to distort around us. When she spoke again, her voice was soft, resolved. There is. The house is the anchor now. If it's destroyed, the connection breaks. We had reached the front door. Beyond it, through the warping glass of the sidelight windows, I could see our front yard, our street, normalcy, tantalizing close. You mean burn it down? She nodded. It's the only way. But Daniel, I can't leave. I stared at her. What? Of course you can. We're almost out. She shook her head, a sad smile on her face. I'm tethered to this place now. Have been for years. I exist because it exists. If it goes. No, I said fiercely. I just got you back. There has to be another way. There isn't. Not this time. She placed a hand on my cheek. You've already saved me, Daniel. From an eternity is their instrument, their anchor. Now let me save everyone else. A tremendous crash came from upstairs, something large breaking through from the other side. Inhuman sounds followed, a skittering, rustling noise that raised goosebumps on my skin. They're coming through, Eliza said urgently. You need to go. Now. I won't leave you. You have to. She pushed me toward the door with surprising strength. Get clear of the house, then call the fire department. Tell them there's a gas leak, an explosion. Anything to get them here quickly. The skittering sounds were on the stairs now, getting closer. Through the distortions in the air, I caught glimpses of something massive descending, a darkness that moved with terrible purpose. Eliza saw my hesitation and gave me one final push. Go. Live, Daniel. Remember me. Remember the truth. With a wrenching sob, I turned and flung the door open, stumbling out onto the porch. Behind me, Eliza slammed the door shut. Through the sidelight window, I saw her give me one last smile before turning to face whatever was coming down the stairs. I ran. Across the yard, past the gate, into the street. When I reached the neighbor's house, I turned back. Our family home was changing before my eyes. The Victorian architecture stretched and compressed, windows elongating into impossible shapes, the roof folding in on itself like origami. From within came flashes of eldritch light and sounds no human throat could produce. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Emergency services, what's your situation? There's a fire, I said, the lie coming easily. 1487, Oakwood Drive. Gas explosion. The whole house is going up. By the time I ended the call, it wasn't entirely a lie anymore. Flames had appeared in the upstairs windows, real, ordinary fire, spreading quickly through the dry old wood of the house. Whether Eliza had set it herself, or it was a byproduct of the dimensional chaos, I couldn't tell. I stood watching as the fire grew, consuming the structure that had been both home and prison. Neighbors emerged from surrounding houses, exclaiming in horror. Someone tried to approach the burning building, but the heat drove them back. No one tried to enter. No one could have survived. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing closer. But they would be too late. Already the roof was collapsing, the walls buckling. And as the structure failed, I felt something else giving way, the wrongness in the air, the sense of something vast and hungry pressing against reality. With each timber that fell, the barrier between worlds strengthened, the gateway closing for good. Eliza was keeping her promise. As the fire department arrived and began their futile battle against the inferno, a police officer led me away, asking questions I barely heard. Yes, I lived there. No, I didn't know what had happened. No, my parents weren't home, a lie that would eventually unravel, but not tonight. I said nothing about Eliza. How could I? She had been officially gone for 10 years. As far as the world knew, there had been no one in that house but me. I watched until there was nothing left but a smoldering foundation, the firefighters finally getting the blaze under control. Whatever had been trying to come through is gone now. I could feel its absence, a lightness in the air, a return to simple, comprehensible reality. My sister was gone too, truly gone this time. But she had died free, had died saving me, saving everyone. It wasn't justice for what had been done to her, but it was something. It was peace, of a sort. As dawn broke over the ruins of our family home, I turned and walked away, carrying the weight of a truth no one would ever believe, and the precious, painful gift of being the one person who would remember Eliza Harrison as she truly was, not a case study, not a failed experiment, but a hero who had saved the world from shadows beyond understanding. 1 year later, the cemetery is quiet this morning, dew still clinging to the grass between the headstones. I make my way along the familiar path, flowers clutched in one hand, to the simple marker I had placed here 6 months ago. It had taken time to arrange, given that there was no body, no official death. But money and persistence eventually won out. A memorial stone, if nothing else. Somewhere I could come to speak to her, even if she wasn't really here. Eliza Harrison, 1997 to 2015, the truth remains. I chose the dates deliberately, acknowledging that, for me, she had died 10 years ago when they locked her door. Whatever had happened after was a different story, one the stone couldn't tell. I kneel and place the flowers, daisies, her favorite, against the cool granite. Hey, Liz, I say softly. It's been a while. In the months since the fire, I've pieced together what I could of my parents' work. There wasn't much left. Most records destroyed in the blaze, their colleagues unwilling to speak to the son of the infamous Harrisons, whose tragic deaths in a house fire had made brief, local headlines. The official investigation concluded that a gas leak had caused the explosion and fire. My parents' bodies were eventually found in the rubble of the basement, identified through dental records. No one looked for a third body. No one knew to look. I submitted my thesis last week, Ethical Boundaries in Consciousness Research, a critical analysis. My professors called it uncommonly insightful and disturbingly prescient. They don't know it's also a warning, because I'm not convinced it's over. Not entirely. Sometimes, in mirrors or windows or still water, I catch glimpses of something. Not Eliza. Not the devourers. Something else, watching, waiting. The investigation into my parents' research group continues, bureaucratic wheels turning slowly. I've been interviewed multiple times, told them everything I could without sounding insane. Experiments on unwilling subjects. Unethical practices. Nothing about dimensional gateways or entities from beyond. That part stays with me, Eliza's final secret. I've started having the dreams, though. Dreams where I'm back in the in-between, wandering its gray landscape. Dreams where I find a door I've never seen before, slightly ajar, darkness spilling out around its edges. Dreams where something whispers my name, the voice neither Eliza's nor inhuman, but somehow both. I haven't opened that door. Not yet. But I sense that someday I might have to. Rising from my crouch, I place my hand on Eliza's headstone, feeling the morning sun warming the stone. I'm keeping watch, I tell her. Just like you did. The door stays closed. As I turn to leave, a breeze stirs the cemetery, rustling the trees and carrying what might be a whisper, so faint I can't be sure I heard it at all. Thank you, Daniel. I don't look back. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. But I know, too, that nothing is ever truly over. The barriers between worlds will always be thinner in some places than others. There will always be those who seek to peer beyond, to reach through. And there will always need to be those who stand guard against the darkness, who remember the price of forbidden knowledge. For now, though, the morning is bright, the world solid beneath my feet. I walk back toward my car, leaving my sister to her rest, real or symbolic, and step into the simple, beautiful reality she died to protect. One day at a time, one foot in front of the other. The truth remains, and so do I.